Do you ever feel that there are too many great indie games to keep up with and you wish that there was a video series to share the best ones with you? Do you ever wish you were a real cat and that I was a real cat so we could, you know. God, I'm lonely. Those who know me well know two things. One, I have absolutely whispered, "Hell yeah," while finding a cool stick multiple times today. And two, I love indie games. I probably play more indie games than anything else these days because that's where all the weird creative energy in gaming lives right now. I love the experimental ideas, the strange art styles, and especially the fact that so many indie games are packed with delicious retro vibes. If you love pixels, like I do, indie games are basically mandatory. Sorry, I don't make the rules. The Indie Bucket is just my excuse to share the games that catch my attention. I haven't fully beaten any of these. Most of them I've only played the first couple hours or whatever. These aren't like deep final reviews or anything. These are just games that I want to talk about and why I think they're cool. Like you. Probably. Statistically speaking. Some of you have to be. I'll have links to all these games in the thingy below. Most are pretty cheap, which is good because I'm also pretty cheap. And I played all these games on my ODIN 2 Portal handheld via an app called Game Native. Check out this video link below if you want to know how to do that. And there's a link down there for where you can pick up a Portal for yourself if you want to be as cool as me. So without further mucking about, as my Uncle Mac would say, let's jump into the bucket. I wrote jump into the bucket in the script, but I don't really want to break my ankle or whatever, so I'm just gonna carefully step in instead. There, I'm in the bucket. What was the point of this again? Legendary Pilots calls itself a cozy flight sim, which sounds like the sort of thing that a game says about itself right before disappointing me. Like when I buy herbal tea because the box promises tranquility, and then I'm still anxious. Except now I'm anxious with tea. But I gotta say, this game kinda earns it. Legendary Pilots is one of the most low-stress games that I've played in a long time. You hop into your little low-poly plane, fiddle with your throttle, use your yaw and pitch to take off and level out, retract your landing gear, and try to remember how the flaps work. That's mostly the game. The cockpit looks intimidating at first because there's buttons and gauges and doodads everywhere, but most of it is just decorative. It gives you the atmosphere of an old-school flight sim without requiring a degree in plane science, which I appreciate because my art degree didn't have a lot of plane science. The visuals have this chunky PS1 kind of low poly style, and combined with the art direction, everything feels fittingly nostalgic. Flying over the landscape feels peaceful, takeoffs are satisfying, and every smooth landing fills me with an amount of confidence wildly disproportionate to my actual abilities. This game is mixed rating on Steam, and I can understand that because what makes this game strange is that it's also trying to be an airline management sim. You gotta manage the finances and the maintenance of the planes or whatever, but the management side feels undercooked. Almost like the skeleton of a bigger game that never fully came together. I think if you wanted more game in this game, you're gonna be disappointed. However, for me, that's totally fine because I'm not here for spreadsheets or to worry about hiring my crew and maintaining my fleet of planes. I'm here because sometimes after a long day, my brain feels like mashed potatoes in a damp sock, and I want to lie in bed, take off in a tiny fake airplane, look at some beautiful low-poly scenery, and attempt a landing with the grace of a confused goose. Saint Slayer Spear of Sacrilege feels like the sort of game that somebody would have rented for me as a kid, and then I'd spend an entire weekend becoming increasingly angry while insisting that I was having fun. And weirdly, I actually mean that as a compliment. This game is very old school in almost every way. The chunky NES-style pixel art, the gothic atmosphere, the catchy chiptune soundtrack, the stiff deliberate movement, it obviously gives off strong early retro Castlevania vibes. Not like modern retro-inspired Metroidvania stuff where everything is polished and forgiving. I mean actual retro. The kind where games occasionally felt like they hated you personally. If you grew up with NES games, you'll probably remember that strange experience of struggling through something over and over until eventually your hands learned what to do before your brain did. You play as this spear-wielding warrior fighting through nasty stages full of enemies and hazards, and for much of the game you feel underpowered. In a good way. Sorta. You unlock spear upgrades and abilities over time, which helps, but resources are limited enough that every mistake feels expensive. I spent a lot of time alternating between "this is awesome" and "this game has made a powerful enemy today." The challenge itself wasn't usually my issue. Tough games can be satisfying. The frustration comes from the occasional cheap feeling stuff. Enemies respawn aggressively, sometimes behind you. Some deaths felt earned, but some definitely felt on the cheap side. Still, despite all that, I am enjoying this, because underneath the occasional annoyance is a game that clearly understands what made old action platformers compelling. The satisfaction of slowly mastering something that initially felt impossible. If you miss games that made you grit your teeth and mutter threats at your television, Sacrilege might be your thing. But if you prefer your retro-style indie games with fewer opportunities to develop stress-related heart conditions, then maybe proceed with caution with this one. The Drifter is overwhelmingly positive on Steam with over 3,000 reviews. And I haven't even beaten the game yet, so I'm probably not the best person to tell you about it. However, you're here now, and I'm here talking about games, so I guess you gotta hear what I have to say anyways. Sorry. The Drifter feels like a long-lost DOS adventure game from 1996, but polished up with modern artistic sensibilities, voice acting, and also it's just extremely good, which is dangerous for me because old point-and-click adventure games activate some dormant part of my brain. All the trauma of DOS adventure games before internet walkthroughs. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. I was drawn to this game by the amazing art, but when I started playing, it immediately grabbed me with the atmosphere. You play as this rough, grizzled drifter guy who gets pulled into increasingly weird and dangerous situations. And within the first couple hours, things go from, "Man, this guy's having a rough day," to "What in the conspiracy theory B-movie nonsense is happening here?" The pixel art is gorgeous in an old school way where every scene feels handcrafted. Moody train yards, lots of rain, strange abandoned places. It's got a gritty 90s adventure game vibe, and every screen is packed with so much stuff that you immediately want to start clicking random junk just to see what happens. Thankfully, clicking random junk remains an important life skill here. The puzzles are noodle scratchers, and so far nothing has felt like old adventure game nonsense where progress required combining toothpaste with a garden hose to somehow create a ladder. Most of what I played feels logical and keeps the story moving, which is good because the story frickin' rocks. I'm only a few hours in, so maybe this game eventually becomes terrible and everyone on Steam was wrong, but I doubt it though. Right now, The Drifter feels to me like a love letter to old point-and-click adventures, except with pacing that doesn't require sacrificing your entire weekend and emotional well-being, which is nice because at my age, those resources are becoming limited. Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom was suggested to me by my boy, Retro Breeze. He identified that I would absolutely love this game, which is honestly kind of annoying because he was right. Again, as always. At this point, I'm starting to suspect that he understands my brain better than I do, which is unsettling because my brain is a complex enigma, as unknowable as the cosmos itself. Except for Retro Breezes. Anyways, yeah, I love this game. It's awesome. You play as a little yellow taxi in a bizarre world full of weird nonsense. There's an evil oil company, there's a legally distinct mustached man named Morio, there's weird people and weird jokes, and honestly, trying to explain the story just it makes me sound like I hallucinated the whole thing, which might have actually happened. I can't say for sure. The important thing is the vibe. This game has so much style. Bright colors, weird characters, chunky retro aesthetics, music that slaps me across the face and steals my lunch money. It's chaotic, but when I'm in the mood, when my heart can take it, this game is, it's so much energy. I love it. The biggest twist though is that there's no jump button, which sounds horrible, like if someone made a racing game and removed turning. Instead, you launch and fling and bounce and backflip your little taxi around using like these weird movement tricks that slowly start making sense after your brain stops trying to understand it. It's hard to explain. At first I hated it, but then something happened. The movement clicked. And suddenly I was zipping around levels, revisiting old areas, finding secrets I missed, pulling off aerial maneuvers, and then feeling like some kind of taxi wizard. A profession with limited employment opportunities in real life, but here, it's your full-time job. This game is weird for the sake of being weird, but underneath all the nonsense is one of the most satisfying retro-style platformers that I've played in ages. It's creative and joyful and just full of ideas. This is Rungore. I had never heard of it before. I just saw some screenshots and I felt drawn to it. And I was not let down. This is exactly the kind of nonsense that I love in an indie game. Rungore is obviously inspired by Slay the Spire, but it takes a different approach to pacing and progression and RNG. Your little dude automatically runs through levels fighting monsters while you frantically throw cards around trying to kill stuff and not die. Combat is real time, so there's none of that sitting for 4 minutes contemplating my next move while stroking my invisible beard. Everything happens at once, and half the time I'm desperately clicking things while hoping future me understands what current me was trying to accomplish, which is also how I manage my actual life. And it's worked out great so far. As you defeat enemies, you unlock new cards, attacks and blocks and permanent upgrades, and slowly build synergies based on what you've added to your deck. Sometimes your build becomes unstoppable. Sometimes your strategy turns into a burning shopping cart, rolling downhill towards an orphanage. And the pixel art is awesome. I love the drawings on the cards. It's so good. The Steam reviews are kind of a mixed bag, and I get that. A lot of people dislike how RNG heavy it can feel. Sometimes bad luck absolutely destroys your run, and there's not much you can do. However, as a tabletop guy, I play lots of dice games, tabletop RPGs, Magic the Gathering. Unfair RNG doesn't bother me. I actually respect when games don't secretly cook the books to make players always feel like a hero. And RNG swings both ways. Sometimes your build comes together perfectly against enemies that you never planned for. In that sense, RNG is kind of a metaphor for life, if you think about it. This is actually a philosophy video, by the way. Fight Night feels like somebody reached into my brain, grabbed all the dusty memories of old school dungeon crawlers, DOS RPGs, chunky first-person grid movement, and also Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and then smashed them together into Fight Night. This game feels like discovering some forgotten game from 1997 that only 14 people played, except that it came out recently and it was made by people who apparently understand my extremely specific tastes better than I do. You play as a knight who loses his sword, so instead he punches everything to death with giant metal fists. And honestly, that's kind of all I needed to hear. The setup is simple. Explore a mysterious tower floor by floor, solve puzzles, fight weird enemies, rescue people, and slowly build out this cozy little hub town full of strange characters. And by talk to people, I mean you literally punch them in the face to advance conversations. It's okay, they're weirdly okay with this. The dungeon crawling has that good old school first-person dungeon crawler grid movement. And then combat starts and suddenly the game turns into Punch-Out, except happening during some kind of strange medieval fever dream. Enemies line up in front of you and you're going to be dodging and weaving, uppercutting, countering, and panic flailing while trying not to get your face rearranged by skeletons or whatever fresh nonsense the game throws at you. The enemies stay surprisingly varied too. Just when I thought I understood things, Fight Night introduced some new creature and forced me to completely rethink my approach, which is kinda rude, honestly. The art style deserves special mention too because screenshots barely sell it. Fight Night sounds ridiculous on paper, but somehow all of its weird ideas do come together. If you love retro dungeon crawlers and Punch-Out, first of all, congratulations on being an extremely specific kind of dork. Second, yeah, you should probably play Fight Night. I love rally games, but I'm not like super into them. I love firing them up to scratch the racing game itch from time to time, and I always have fun when I do, but I know that there are people out there who spend hundreds of hours in rally games, perfecting track times and understanding suspension tuning or whatever. I don't know if those people will like old school rally, but for me, as a rally game tourist and retro game enthusiast, old school rally is exactly the kind of racing game that I need in my life. This thing feels absurdly authentic. Not authentic to like real rally racing, I don't know anything about that. I mean authentic to old retro rally games. The chunky visuals, the low poly car models, even the weird rendering distance where distant objects sort of materialize into existence. The actual racing is fun too. Arcadey, fast, difficult enough that eventually you start learning tracks and improving rather than simply throwing your car at corners with blind optimism, which was my opening strategy. Still though, I keep coming back because sometimes, usually actually, I don't want realism. I just want my brain to briefly think it's 1998 again. Because old school rally nails something I crave, the feeling of old racing games. Not just visually, but emotionally. It feels like a game from that era, but with modern game sensibilities. This is something I love, and it's something that indie games do better than any other style of game. Literally every game I showed in this video does that. Old school game styles with retro-inspired graphics but modern game design, which totally wasn't intentional. It's just what I like and wanted to talk about, but here we are. And that brings us to the end. Another handful of games tossed into the indie bucket. I want to do about one of these videos a month, but my backlog is growing faster than I can actually make videos about the games, which is kind of a problem.
That's the opposite of a problem.
You're right, Finn. I should stop worrying and just make the videos that my heart desires. Speaking of which, stay tuned for my upcoming peanut butter and banana sandwich tutorial series. Part 1 is almost done. It's about bread selection and somehow it's already 7 hours long. But seriously, I hope you enjoyed checking some of these games out. And if you know any great indie games that I need to play, let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for weird little retro flavored games with cool ideas and crunchy pixels. If you got any of those for me, just let me know. Also, the more indie games I buy, the less money I have available for dangerous hobbies. Right now, the ratio is 100% indie games and 0% homemade submarines. And I think we should all work together to keep it that way. And that'll do it for me for today. I'm TechDweeb, thanks for watching, bye bye!